What is going on, Trash Talkers? We're back with another episode for you. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and their 2021 season preview, including record predictions. All that and much more coming your way right now! Hey Trash Talkers, it's Mike here. Over 93% of you who view our show each and every day are not subscribed to the channel. If you could hit that red subscribe button, it would help us out tremendously, and it is completely free for you guys. If you want to stay up to date with our daily content, then click that bell icon and you will be notified every time we go live. Nick and I both really appreciate you subscribing to the channel, and we can't wait to keep making more daily content for you. All right, Nick, as we continue this series, we are on the final division in the NFL, and that is starting off with the Pittsburgh Steelers, the AFC North, the Pittsburgh Steelers. We are in for a treat, and I'm really excited to talk about this team. Let's start with their additions, starting off with Joe Haeg, Miles Killebrew, running back Najee Harris, tight end Pat Freirmuth. Nick, out of these, which do you think is the biggest addition this team made?
It's not a lot of additions, but I think they are key additions. I think they're going to be very big additions for this team. But to me, Najee Harris is the biggest one because James Conner, you all know as Pittsburgh Steelers fans, you know he was a bust. He was not a good running back. He didn't do anything for this offense. Le'Veon Bell was 10 times a better running back than James Conner ever was, but Najee Harris comes in and he's even better than Le'Veon Bell. I'm willing to say that. I think that he's going to be a huge weapon for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's going to be utilized just like Le'Veon Bell. He's going to be a bell cow for him. He's going to be a huge passing weapon for them. He's going to be all over the field. He's going to be a big target for Ben Roethlisberger. He's going to be a big reason why this team gets a lot of wins this season. And to me, he's the biggest addition they made this offseason.
Yeah, I'm taking a look, and obviously Najee Harris is a massive upgrade at the running back position. I'm also going to go with tight end Pat Freirmuth. I think Freirmuth got a little disrespect going into the draft this year, talking about, he wasn't obviously as good as Kyle Pitts, but I reckon to say that most tight ends in NFL history aren't as good as what Kyle Pitts has shown his capabilities to be. So when you're talking about Pat Freirmuth, I think he's going to be one of those explosive tight ends that we say, how the hell did he drop to the second round and really go unnoticed? How did he go past so many teams and not get drafted? And I think at this point we're picking and choosing here, but Pat Freirmuth is going to be a very respectable tight end. The Steelers offense, they always know how to use tight ends. We saw what Eric Ebron can do in this system. We've seen what Jesse James has done in this system. We've seen what plenty of tight ends throughout the years have done. So I'm looking forward to it. I think Freirmuth is going to have a really good career in Pittsburgh. Now with those additions do come some losses. Let's take a look at those losses, starting off with defensive end Tyson Alualu, outside linebacker Bud Dupree, defensive back Mike Hilton, offensive tackle Matt Feiler, offensive tackle Alejandro Villanueva, center Maurkice Pouncey, and guard David DeCastro. Nick, out of these losses, which is the biggest for you?
I mean, you're not going to like me for this, but I'm taking the entire offensive line. When you lose your left tackle, your center, and now your right guard today, that is a massive loss for this offensive line. When you lose a guy like David DeCastro and you're trying to replace him with Joe Haeg, a guy who was a partial starter for the Buccaneers during the Super Bowl run, you know what? That's okay, but he's definitely not David DeCastro. That's a big hole. I'm more worried about the center the guy who hands the ball to Ben Roethlisberger and protects him up the middle, and the guy who protects his blind side. Because let's face it, Big Ben's old. He is not getting any younger. He's not moving around like he used to, and he can't take the hits that he used to. Also, I think now blindside blocker being completely new to him, he's going to approach this very differently. He's going to be a lot more timid in the pocket. He's going to be a lot more trigger happy. This could be a bad thing if the offensive line doesn't hold up. He's going to really rely upon his receivers. I think they're going to struggle getting the chemistry of the offensive line going, getting the chemistry of the offense as a whole together. To me, the timing's going to be off, and it's going to show up. It's going to show up early and often this season for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Offensive line is going to be a huge issue for this team, especially since Joe Haeg was the only notable person that they brought in to fill this hole. I mean, just taking a look at their projected depth chart, you have Chukwumo Okorafor, Kevin Dotson, Kendrick Green, Aviante Collins, and Zach Banner or Joe Haeg at right tackle. I'm going to be honest, when you go from a top 5, possibly top 3 offensive line to that group of players, no disrespect to them, but that's not what Big Ben is used to. It's not what this offense is used to. I think that every aspect of this team is going to be strained even more so because the lack of offensive line play is going to come out huge for them. But I think the biggest loss actually comes on the defensive side of the ball. When you're talking about Tyson Alualu and Bud Dupree, these guys were absolute incredible players. Tyson Alualu ate up blocks like nobody could ever imagine. I mean, you look at a guy like Lawrence Guy in New England, what he did in Baltimore, right, went unnoticed, and only people like Bill Belichick really noticed that he was eating up blocks and willing to do the dirty work before getting stats on the stat sheet. You know, I think Tyson Alualu was very much that type of player for the Steelers, where he allowed TJ Watt, he allowed Bud Dupree to get after the quarterback. He ate up a lot of, blockers for Cameron Hayward and some of these other guys on the defensive line. So he's going to be a big loss. And I do believe Bud Dupree, opposite TJ Watt, was an incredible, 1-2 punch that they had. Now you relying on TJ Watt, who is an incredible person and incredible player in and of his own right. But without his running mate, it's going to be much easier to be able to double team him, make sure that there's somebody to chip him on every single play, because you don't have to worry about who else is coming off the other side. So at this point, I think that the biggest loss does come on the defensive side of the ball. Either way, massive losses for the Steelers, and they are not going to be near the team that they were last year. So let's take a look at their schedule and go through their record predictions. All right, week 1, the Pittsburgh Steelers are on the road in Buffalo, New York, taking on the Bills in front of Bills Mafia. They're going to be in an electric stadium at New Era Field, and I believe that the Buffalo Bills, who are a season removed from being at the AFC Championship game, ever so close to the Super Bowl, are a much more talented team. They were able to retain most of their key players from last year. They were able to build upon that through the draft, and I look at the Buffalo Bills as a much stronger team, almost a replication of what the Steelers used to be. I think the Bills are going to come out on top in week 1.
Moving into week 2, the Las Vegas Raiders head to Pittsburgh, where Pittsburgh gets their first home game of the season. And this is a very big game, as the Steelers don't want to start 0-2 after starting last season so hot, going undefeated longer than any other team. They know they have some trouble, and I think that's going to get a little bit more exposed. Their offensive line is not going to be able to hold up to this Raiders pass rush. When you add Yannick Ngakoue, you've already got Max Crosby, Carl Nassib, Cleveland Farrell. These defensive ends are hungry. They are coming for Big Ben all day long, and I think with that rotation, those 4 guys are going to have a field day. This is going to be a lot of pressure for Big Ben. I think he's going to throw a lot of errant passes, and this Raiders secondary has improved as well. I think this defense for the Raiders is really going to step up. They're going to be the difference maker, and the Raiders are going to take a big win over the Steelers in week 2.
In week 3, the Cincinnati Bengals come to town, and this used to be a game where the Steelers welcome the Bengals. Now, I think the Bengals are a very strong team. I think they're going to be able to really put the pedal to the metal with the Steelers, and you bring back Joe Burrow after his knee injury last year. You add his favorite weapon from LSU in Jamar Chase. You really have a trio of wide receivers that you can rely on. I think that the Bengals have what it takes to beat the Steelers. Unfortunately, I think the Steelers still held a little power on them. I think the front seven of this Steelers defense is going to be able to get after Joe Burrow, as the Bengals did not do enough work on the offensive line to be able to protect him. And I think that the Steelers at this point will get the win in week 3.
Then week 4, the Steelers head to Green Bay where they face Aaron. Oh no, not Aaron Rodgers. Oh, that's right. He doesn't want to be there anymore. We're on to Jordan Love now. So Pittsburgh Steelers head to Green Bay and they face Jordan Love. A fresh face for them. This is going to be a very good matchup for them, as TJ Watt is hungry to sack Jordan Love for the first time in his career. And I think that the Steelers pass rush, the Steelers secondary, they're going to be all over Jordan Love. They're going to want to make his life miserable. I think it's going to be a mission accomplished at the end of the day, and the Steelers will get a big win, their second win in a row. The Steelers get a big win in week 4.
Then in week 5, the Aaron Rodgers did I say that out loud? I mean, the Denver Broncos come to Pittsburgh and face off against the Steelers. I'm just kidding. Aaron Rodgers isn't playing for the Broncos, let's be real. But nonetheless, the Broncos are a much better team than the Steelers. You take a look at the wide receiving depth that they have: Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick. I mean, the corners that you have for the Steelers, you're talking about Joe Hayden. I mean, really? Is that what we're leaning on? For one corner, 3 wide receivers. Sounds fair. Yeah, I have the Broncos winning this one. I think the Broncos are just an overall better team than the Steelers at this point. Week 5 belongs to the Denver Broncos.
Then moving into week 6, the Seattle Seahawks head to Pittsburgh. It's going to be a very interesting matchup. The Seattle Seahawks, they have been on the same road as the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were good the last few years, and now they're going to start to take a little bit of a dip. And I think the Seahawks mainly got worse on the defensive side of the ball, and I think the Steelers' offense is really going to take advantage of that. The secondary for the Seahawks is non-existent. Besides Jamal Adams, who can't even cover a guy like Julian Edelman, what's he going to do against guys like Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, and then Najee Harris? There's just absolutely no way the Seattle Seahawks are stopping this offense. I think the Steelers have too much power, even more power than the Seattle offense, and they're going to get the job done week 6, a big win against Seattle.
In week 7, the Steelers have their bye week, and then they come out of the bye week on the road in Cleveland, facing off their division rivals. And the Cleveland Browns are no joke, adding Troy Hill, John Johnson, you know the whole gambit. And I believe at this point, the Cleveland Browns are a much stronger team than the Steelers. They're here to bring a show of force, and I believe that the Browns will win in week 8.
Then in week 9, the Pittsburgh Steelers are at home facing off against the Chicago Bears, and it's probably going to be Justin Fields at this point. Andy may be QB1 day 1, but this is week 9, and things have not gone very well for the Chicago Bears. The Pittsburgh Steelers want to take a guy like Justin Fields and make his life miserable. They want to teach this rookie a lesson, and TJ Watt is up for the task. He's really looking to hit home for the Pittsburgh Steelers, get a ton of sacks on Justin Fields. He's going to have a very easy time, as the Bears' offensive line is still very bad. They're very porous all over, and they're not going to be able to stand up to the Steelers' defense. Steelers are going to take another big win in week 9.
In my head, there's not many teams that are much worse than the Pittsburgh Steelers, but in week 10, they face one of those teams, that being the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions, who are in shambles at this point, trying to figure out which way is up and what sport they're playing. I think the Detroit Lions are in full rebuild mode. Maybe. They don't know. We don't know, and nobody knows. So I think the Detroit Lions, once they figure out what day of the week it is and possibly what sport they're playing, maybe they'll be able to put up some points against the Steelers. Either way, I don't think the Jared Goff-led Lions is going to be able to do too much in week 10.
Then in week 11, the Pittsburgh Steelers headed across the country to Los Angeles, facing off against the Chargers. This is going to be a very good matchup, except when you look at the Chargers and their offseason. They've vastly improved on the offensive line. This is going to be the huge difference maker in this matchup. TJ Watt's going to try his best to hit home for the Steelers. It's just not going to happen, as now they've got Brian Bulaga and Corey Linsley and Rashawn Slater as the 3 pillars of this offensive line. It's going to be very hard to get past these guys, and I think the Chargers offense is going to be way too high-powered for the Steelers defense. The Chargers are going to have a very easy time putting up points, and the Steelers may have a little bit of a struggle, as Joey Bosa is going to be taking advantage of that weak left side.
Then in week 12, the Pittsburgh Steelers hit the road, face the Cincinnati Bengals, who they narrowly beat in week 3. And I think the Cincinnati Bengals, again, Joe Burrow, even further removed from that knee injury, coming back. He's got his plethora of weapons. And I actually have the Bengals edging out the Steelers in week 12. I think the Bengals are one of those teams that you really can't look down upon. The Pittsburgh Steelers, we went through their offensive line woes. We went through their defensive woes. The back end of their defense is absolutely atrocious. I just can't see how the Bengals will lose twice to this team. I think week 12 belongs to the Cincinnati Bengals.
This has been a back and forth season for the Pittsburgh Steelers so far, but they want to try to get back on the winning side of football again as they're at home in week 13 facing off against the Baltimore Ravens for the first time this season. And they've seen by this point that the Baltimore Ravens offense has gotten much stronger because they finally added more weapons for Lamar Jackson to throw to, and his legs have become more dangerous than ever. Except the Pittsburgh Steelers know how to stop Lamar Jackson. They've done it plenty times in the past, and they're going to continue to dominate Lamar Jackson in this home matchup. The Pittsburgh Steelers take a big divisional win in week 13.
In week 14, the Steelers hit the road, face off against the Minnesota Vikings on Thursday Night Football. A short week after a divisional matchup with the Ravens is never good. That is an absolute brawl fest with the Ravens, and now they have to go face Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen, and oh yeah, that guy that won Offensive Rookie of the Year in Justin Jefferson. Set a couple records here and there, but who's counting, right? The Vikings offense is going to tear apart this Steelers defense. Look for the Vikings to come out on top on Thursday Night Football, week 14.
Then in week 15, the Tennessee Titans are making their way to Pittsburgh. This is going to be an interesting matchup as you've got two high-powered offenses, but the defenses are on the same level as each other. To me, these teams are very equally paired for each other, and it's really going to come down to who has the ball at the end of the game. I'm going to give it to the home team. To me, the Pittsburgh Steelers, their veteran leadership, their chemistry together, it's really going to shine in this one. And I think the Pittsburgh Steelers get another big win against another big AFC opponent in week 15.
Sitting at 7-7, the Pittsburgh Steelers are in a conundrum of what their season kind of looks at, and now they have to go on the road and face the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. And there are a few places that NFL players do not like to play. Seattle, Kansas City, yeah, the Arrowhead Stadium, definitely one of those places. And I think that the Chiefs, so powerful on offense, they're going to be able to score at will against this Steelers team. Will the Steelers offense be able to score at will against the Chiefs defense? Doubtful. So I believe that the Chiefs are going to easily come out on top in week 16. Look for Patrick Mahomes to have a field day.
Moving into week 17, the Cleveland Browns are facing off against the Pittsburgh Steelers for the second and final time this season. And the Steelers have seen the improvements that the Browns have made. But as the season has progressed, the Steelers have made some improvements. They know how to face the Browns this time around, and they're ready to come through and get the W. As we all know, Mike Tomlin is a guy who learns from his mistakes the first time and doesn't repeat them. He's going to make sure that the Steelers are ready to go for week 17 and split the series with the Browns this season.
Then the final game of the season, possibly for the Pittsburgh Steelers, on the road at Baltimore. They narrowly beat the Ravens in week 13, and this is one for the ages as the Ravens are fighting for a playoff spot, fighting for playoff seed. The Steelers are fighting for a playoff spot themselves. Can they get in? It's all down to this. Sitting at 8-8, they are on the cusp, and at this point, I think that the Ravens are not going to allow the Steelers to beat them twice in one season. Look for Lamar Jackson and this running attack with J.K. Dobbins to become all too fortuitous. I believe that the addition of Sammy Watkins and what they can do on the offensive side of the ball is really going to put pressure on the Steelers. I have the Ravens winning in week 18.
With a record of 8-9 on the season, it's not looking good for the Pittsburgh Steelers as they really didn't have a tough schedule this year, and they should have been able to do more with the weapons they have. But due to the fact that they did not fill the holes they needed to on this offensive line in the secondary, those are going to come back to bite them this season. They're going to be the ones taken advantage of the most by their opposing teams. And I think this is the start of the downfall for the Pittsburgh Steelers until they can correct these problems, because Big Ben's not around much longer, and all these receivers are going to have to get paid very soon, as well as Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think that the Steelers are in for a rude awakening unless they can figure out a miraculous way of signing everybody just like the Buccaneers did. The Steelers 8-9 is as good as it gets for me, and I think that this is as good as it gets for them for the next few years.
Pittsburgh Steelers are in a very desperate situation where they're trying to hold on to the glory years. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers remind me of the guy who graduated 4 years ago but still waits outside of the school to talk to all the kids that didn't even know he existed with his class ring and his varsity jacket on. I mean, that's really who the Steelers are to me at this point. Big Ben turned to dust last year. They started out what 11-0 and then went 1-4 down the stretch. I mean, there was so much, there were so many issues with this team. There was so much that went wrong with this team that there's just not enough to say, you know what, they can correct those issues. And the things that worked well for them, including their offensive line, got absolutely decimated. They lose Mike Hilton on the back end of their defense. You're leaving Joe Hayden on an island by himself to say, you know what, go at it. Him and Minkah Fitzpatrick, they got to figure it out together. And listen, Minkah Fitzpatrick's a great safety. I don't get me wrong. I think he's arguably one of the best safeties in the league. But when there's no help, there's no support. I mean, you have spot pieces here and there. T.J. Watt, Cameron Hayward, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Joe Hayden. Outside of those guys, not a whole hell of a lot to write home about. And I think that the Steelers are in a very bad situation. I don't like where the Steelers are right now. I think they have to make some desperate moves to get this offensive line back and going. I almost think that they shouldn't have brought back Juju Smith-Schuster. I think they should have let him go somewhere else, but that's a discussion for another time. At this point, the Steelers not looking too hot for a playoff spot and need to go back to the drawing board moving forward. All right, well, that's going to do it for now. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell. We go live every single day. That'll be all. Peace and love.